Hey, what is up, everybody? This is Steve Breach coming to you here today as we review World War III 1996. I can honestly say that I did enjoy this match more than I did the 1995 version with the WCW World Heavyweight Championship on the line with Macho Man taking it and the whole thing with the build-up to the match of Hogan versus Savage taking place on Nitro. The 1996 episode of World War III took place during the middle of the NWO versus WCW war that was going down. That time in wrestling, honestly, is really entertaining. The NWO, honestly, at this point is only, I believe, 6 members strong, so we're not at the point where they've let everybody in. But they are at the point where you got Kevin Nash, you've got Scott Hall, you've got Six, you've got the Giant, Hollywood Hogan, who's not a part of this show. He's not booked, brother. But this match just starts with guys just pouring out of the back. If you're not familiar with World War III, it's basically WCW's answer to the Royal Rumble. Their way of making it bigger and better is just adding more guys and more rings. 3 rings hold 60 wrestlers. Everybody comes out at once. The rules state in this year's edition of World War III is that you can freely move from ring to ring. At the first one, they made it seem like they drew which ring they were going to stay in, and then basically when you were down to 10 men in your ring, you would move into the center ring to continue on with the match. This match has guys that I had not seen in years in WCW. They've got guys that I didn't even know worked for WCW. You've got guys that people thought were going to be stars in the business and honestly just sort of faded out because WCW would use them. And then all of a sudden, they'd go home and they've got 60 guys in one match. It's hard to keep the roster straight. I'm sure that if you were just left off of one Nitro, next thing you knew, it'd be 2-3 months and you hadn't been booked, but you still got a paycheck showing up, so you really get a call and complain about it. This year's match basically is a lot, the NWO versus WCW. There are some internal feuds built into this match as well. Before the match even starts, we have Kevin Sullivan and Chris Benoit. There's a lot built up in this feud. Basically, I think a lot of people already know what is going down, but Chris Benoit had stolen woman from Kevin Sullivan, basically on the show and in real life. Some people would say that Kevin Sullivan had booked his own divorce, but basically these guys tried to make their series of matches real because of the fact that woman had really left Sullivan for Benoit. These were real fights. Most people will remember, Matt Hardy, Edge, and Lita from around 2005, 2006. That's a storyline that's never going to fade out. But this is the same thing. Just one of them ended up dead years later, and a lot of people have this weird thought that Kevin Sullivan is the one that really went in there and killed everybody. That's not what I think happened, but it is what it is. Before this match even starts, they're talking about a house show in Baltimore where Kevin Sullivan beat the piss out of Chris Benoit. And when Benoit comes out, his face is literally bruised all over. Black eye, broken jaw. But he's still coming out there to fight the fight. And him and Sullivan meet right there. And they're fighting. And basically, I think a lot of the wrestlers probably thought that this was a real fight because of the fact that a lot of wrestlers came down to get involved that were not a part of the Four Horsemen, not a part of the Dungeon of Doom, to the point where Lee Marshall, one of the announcers, there's 6 announcers covering this match because there's so many guys. There's 2 announcers for each ring. There's Tony Schiavone, there's Lee Marshall, Dusty Rhodes, Bobby Heenan, the one guy, Mike Tenay. and somebody else out there. There's pairings for each ring, so everybody can talk about what's going on, and you only have to watch the one ring to talk about the people getting dumped out as they go. But basically, Lee Marshall gets caught up in the middle of the fight, and he gets beat up, and he gets taken down. Takes Lee Marshall a while to get up. You honestly hear him say when he's on the floor, what the hell's going on? I'm not sure. I think he really got, wrong. I think he was in the wrong place, the wrong time. And I think he just got thrown down to the floor and he got beat up by the Faces of Fear. But I don't really know. I've never heard the story of what the hell's going on. But once Lee Marshall finally gets up, he starts calling the action again. He even calls out Zbyszko for not coming to his aid, helping him up, or helping him beat anybody up with him being a former wrestler. This is a bad Mamma Jamma match. These guys are beating the hell out of each other. Really cool. NWO just stands in a corner. No one fucks with them. They don't fuck with anybody. And they just stand there and they watch, knowing that when it comes down to it, they're going to be fresh guys. Let WCW beat the hell out of each other, because at this point, they hadn't come together yet. We hadn't had the truths between like Sting, Luger, Ric Flair, and Arn Anderson. These guys were still going out there. They're going to fight the NWO. They'll fight each other to see who's going to fight the NWO. They're going to beat each other up because they think that each other aren't handling the situation to the best of what's going down. Once finally the rings start to empty out, it is actually Roadblock who stands up to the Giant. This is the first interaction between any wrestlers and the NWO, and we see a massive face-off where Roadblock stands up to the Giant, and the Giant clotheslines Roadblock over the top, eliminating him. This is probably one of the biggest eliminations, because besides for the Giant, the Roadblock is probably the biggest guy in this match. Although Roadblock was not the hugest star, Battle Royals are always sort of looked at as, the bigger you are, the more harder the elimination is going to come. The match really picks up the pace when there's about 10 guys left in the ring. The NWO, no one's been eliminated, so you have 6. You've got the Giant, Kevin Nash, and Scott Hall. You've got DDP, you've got Regal, Lex Luger, Eddie Guerrero, and Rey Mysterio. Standing in the middle is DDP. At this point, he was sort of the NWO was recruiting DDP. DDP sort of kept on not answering the thing, but what is led to be WCW versus the NWO. We see Steven Regal take a cheap shot at Rey Mysterio and Eddie Guerrero, and we basically see WCW guys eliminating WCW guys before it comes down to the point where the NWO tosses out Steven Regal, and we are left with the Giant 6, Scott Hall and Kevin Nash against Lex Luger. 4-on-1. And we see Luger go on a mad fury of fight, basically almost picking up the Giant for the torture rack, although just tap outs are not allowed in World War III. You could have tapped out all day long, but if Luger wasn't going to be able to toss him over the top, he just was going to be left there. But we see a really hard elimination of basically Kevin Nash and Luger being dumped over the top by the Giant, and the Giant is the last man standing. We see a face-off between Kevin Nash and the Giant to end out the show, sort of building the speculation that although the Giant won the World War III, he now has a title shot against Hollywood Hogan. And is he going to stand down? Is Kevin Nash going to be pissed that he's not the guy who won, even though that the NWO still sort of stood together? I'm pretty sure the Giant got kicked out. I'm pretty sure that led to the Giant cashing in his title shot against Hogan at a pay-per-view. But this is a good time. WCW World War III, 1996. Peace out. See you guys down the road.